recent advances with regard to dementia, which gives us a lot of information about how even to prevent it. It would be as a lead in to Dr. Naheed, who will then give us the Ayurveda perspective. And Dr. Rajvinder will then give us more the nutrition dietary aspect. And that can bring it back to myself to make a summary of what from the modern perspective, which is totally validating what from the Ayurveda perspective we can be doing on a day-to-day basis to ensure we're functioning at our best, we're taking care of our brains, and that we're moving in the right direction in relation to health generally. So I'd like to share the screen with you, and in sharing the screen, bring up some slides, which I hope you see now, about Maharishi Ayurveda, memory loss, dementia, including Alzheimer's disease. And when we talk about Ayurveda, we talk about Veda, which means knowledge, and Ayus, which is life or lifespan, and Ayurveda being the knowledge of life. And we talk about Maharishi Ayurveda because Maharishi Mahesh Yogi actually from the 1950s worked relentlessly around the world, first of all, to make available a form of simple, easily to achieve meditation. And having established this transcendental meditation globally and engaged the scientists in its research, he motivated the revival of the whole concept of meditating in our cultures, and went on then back to the tradition of Ayurveda, the health tradition of which TM would be an aspect, and engaging in India, a big panel of Ayurvedic experts, particularly 3 very renowned Ayurvedic doctors. He brought that ancient tradition and made it global, really. But in a way revived it because he was establishing that consciousness, your inner awareness, lies at the basis of your health and at the basis of Ayurveda, because it's that innate consciousness which becomes lively as the intelligence, structuring your body. And the Ayurveda is to allow you and help you to recognize who you are, what's your nature, and what are your needs, and how to keep a balance. And so he engaged the scientists in the West then in validating the whole field of this tradition of health. And increasingly, it's becoming more and more evidence-based now. And it's just interesting, today's topic shows how the evidence, again, is showing the old traditions of how we take care of our health to be incredibly valid. This Ayurveda is very, very useful for us. So we're talking about your consciousness as it manifests, and in Ayurveda it will be understood that life flows through the heart initially and then to the finest feeling level, which are encapsulated in the heart, to then find expression, and our nervous system is the instrument through which we project through our senses and then organize our activities to interact with the surroundings. So our thinking, our feeling, our memories, our decision-making has this amazing structure of a brain, of which, just to give an idea of the complexity, the cerebrum, or top portion of your brain, which makes up 85%, has 86 billion nerve cells. And each of those nerve cells has thousands of connections to other nerve cells. And so it's a hugely complex, incredibly sophisticated computer. And really the action, where it's at in the brain, is in what's called the synapse. So here's a diagram of nerve cell, and it has its axon, the long limb, and it has shorter limbs, dendrites, which all of them end in synapses, which you see in the corner on the right. The synapse is that sort of where the cells almost touch but don't. There's a little gap, and in that gap, chemicals cross to transfer information. So this synapse is what we will be talking about later on in terms of our cognition and in terms of the disturbance of cognition. But also in the synapse, there are little particles attached to the membrane in all nerve cells, and especially around the synapses. They're called the receptors, but there's a specific receptor called an amyloid precursor protein. And this amyloid precursor protein is a particular receptor on the synapse, which is very significant in relation to our brain's function. And I'll come back to that. So when we think about the brain, it's an incredible structure, which by 27th week in the womb, all the various parts of the brain are there. But from then on, it's the interconnecting of these parts, a huge flurry, explosion of development of nerve connections. And from the age of 1 to 4, 1 million synapses or connections between nerve cells per minute developing in the child. And then during the 4 to 10, there's more connections in the brain than there will ever be again, which actually start to be weeded out, and from 10 to 20, 2% decline every year in the number of these connections, because what's happening now is the great potential laid down from 10 to 20, everything is getting more practical in that the potential that's needed is maintained. It's a matter of, if you don't use it, you lose it. And so by the age of 25, the brain is fully formed, and it is absolutely unique because it has been structured basically by the experience of life of that individual. So each of us has a unique structure of a brain, and it doesn't change there. As Dr. Rajvinder will talk about later on, neuroplasticity means the brain continues to change throughout life. But what strikes me with all of this is that it's a little bit sad, because Ayurveda has this great science called Vajikarna, which for a year before conception would have the parents prepare themselves for the best possible offspring by taking care of their own health. And then, having conceived, the advices within pregnancy and for the treatment of children and teenagers that Ayurveda offers could allow for a far better brain structure. Even just to know the herbals to use at that explosive stage between 1 and 4, so that the best possible synaptic interconnections were created. Even that from Ayurveda. And I think when Ayurveda for future generations is integrated, we will end up with 25-year-olds who are far more wise, fulfilled, knowledgeable, integrated, enlightened beings with living far more for life of their potential. And that's what we would like. And from 20 on, what happens? Well, unfortunately, what's common and what is recognized in our culture is cognitive aging. From the mid-20s even on, we're beginning to lose memory, the value of our attention, the speed of our processing in the brain, our language skills, our executive function, decision-making. They start to decline, which is rather shocking.